My name's Daniel. I'm 29, and I guess I've always been the quiet one in the family. You know the type. The kid who doesn't raise his voice, who brings his own book to family barbecues, who says thank you and excuse me even when people barely notice he's there. I was never dramatic, never confrontational, which is probably why, over the years, my family got very comfortable treating me like I didn't matter. Not in the loud, abusive way you see in movies, but in the quiet, suffocating way that makes you question if you ever really belonged. I was always the afterthought, the kid who got invited last, the cousin who didn't get a slice of cake until someone remembered he was still sitting there, the nephew who got socks for Christmas when the others got iPads and cash. But I never said anything. I always told myself it wasn't worth it, that some people just aren't meant to fit in, even with their own blood. But the wedding, that changed everything. It was my cousin Emma's big day, the golden girl of the family. Straight A's, perfect smile, never missed a chance to remind you she was accepted into Columbia at 17. Everyone adored her. My parents always said, "Why can't you be more like Emma?" And I learned to smile and nod and pretend it didn't sting every single time. When the invitation came, or rather, when my mom forwarded me the group text with the details, I was honestly surprised. I thought maybe things were different now. I thought, maybe, someone finally remembered to include me. The venue was an elegant estate about 2 hours outside the city. I got there early, dressed in a suit I'd saved up for specifically for the event. Navy, tailored, nothing too flashy, but enough to feel like I belonged. The parking lot was already packed with luxury cars and laughter echoed from the gardens. I walked in, scanning for someone I knew. My mom spotted me first, standing with my Uncle Ray near the check-in table. I waved. She didn't wave back. Instead, she gave me this look, not angry, not annoyed, just inconvenienced. "Daniel," she said flatly, "you actually showed up." I blinked. I was invited. "You were informed," she corrected, glancing around like she didn't want anyone to hear. "Let's not make a scene." That should have been my first warning. But I nodded like I always did and walked past them toward the reception area. The garden was beautiful, fairy lights, soft jazz playing, the smell of fresh roses in the air. The tables were set in a wide U shape around a small dance floor. Each table had neatly written name tags. I walked slowly, scanning for mine. Nothing. I went around the first table, mostly aunts and uncles. Then the second, cousins, Emma's college friends. I passed the table with the bridal party and paused. Still no Daniel. I checked a few chairs tucked at the end, just in case mine had fallen or been moved. Still nothing. I circled back to the entrance, where the coordinator was flipping through a clipboard. I cleared my throat. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm Daniel Hart. I think I might be missing my place card." She gave me a polite smile, flipped through her list, and frowned. "You're not on the seating chart," she said softly. I froze. "Are you sure?" "I'm positive. Maybe check with your family." So I did. I walked back toward the entrance and found my mom and Uncle Ray still standing there, sipping champagne like they owned the place. "Hey," I said carefully. "I think there's been a mix-up. My seat's missing." My mom didn't even blink. "It's not a mix-up." "What?" "We didn't assign you a seat," she said, like it was obvious. "Emma didn't know if you'd even come. And space was limited. You gave a +1 to Jared," I said, motioning toward my cousin's 19-year-old boyfriend, who had barely been dating her for 3 weeks and who had posted a half-nude mirror selfie the night before with the caption, "Catch me at the open bar." "But not a seat for me." My uncle snorted. "Don't make this about you, Daniel. You've always been the outsider. Just be glad you were invited." I stared at them, words caught in my throat. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I turned to my mom again. "There's not even a plate for me." "You're lucky we even let you come," she said coldly. That was it. That was the exact moment I stopped trying to belong. Because I had been invited, not to be included, but to watch from the sidelines. To fill a head count. To be quiet, unnoticed, and easily forgotten. Just like always. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that 2 weeks before the wedding, I'd gotten a call from Emma. It was a quick call, 2 minutes at most. She was panicking, something about her slideshow being corrupted and needing help rebuilding it from scratch. "I heard you do tech stuff," she said, like I was a customer service rep, not her cousin. "I spent 3 nights working on it. Re-edited all the photos, added transitions, even found her favorite song from a vacation we took as kids. I'd saved everything on a drive, plus a backup, because I know how family works. And now, standing in that garden, clutching the folded invite in my pocket like a crumpled receipt, I felt something inside me shift. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just turned, walked calmly to my bag, and unzipped the side pocket. There it was, the backup USB drive, still neatly labeled with Emma's initials. I slipped it into my jacket and looked around. The DJ booth was just off the dance floor, tucked behind a white floral arch. The DJ was busy adjusting a mic, nodding along to some pre-wedding playlist. I walked toward him slowly, the music still playing. Soft piano, something classical. Guests were laughing, mingling. Emma was taking selfies near the fountain with her new in-laws. No one noticed me approaching. I reached the booth and waited. The DJ turned, surprised. "Hey, you need something?" I smiled politely. "Hi." Emma asked me to update the slideshow. Last-minute changes. Her phone died, and she said you'd help. He hesitated. I handed him the drive. "She'll freak if it doesn't get shown," I added, dropping Emma's exact phrasing from the voicemail she left me. "It's the backup." The DJ shrugged. "All right, man. I'll cue it after this track." I nodded. "Thanks." Then I stepped back, just far enough to see the room. 5 minutes later, the music stopped, and so did every conversation in the room. At first, no one noticed. The sudden pause in music just made a few people glance up from their cocktails. A couple of heads turned toward the DJ booth with mild confusion, expecting a mic check or an announcement from the officiant. A few seconds passed in silence. Then the screen flickered on. The projector, tucked just beside the wedding cake table, lit up against the white canvas behind the dance floor. Someone whispered, "Oh, it's the slideshow," and a wave of polite smiles passed through the crowd. Chairs shuffled as guests began to turn and watch. Emma, radiant in her lace gown, clutched her bouquet tighter and motioned toward the screen. Her husband, I think his name was Carter, leaned over and kissed her temple. A perfect moment. Perfect lighting. Perfect everything. And then the first image appeared. It was of Emma, around 10 years old, sitting in my lap at a 4th of July barbecue. We were laughing. Fireworks in the background, our faces sticky with popsicle juice. My dad had taken that photo. I remember because he spent 10 minutes trying to get the right angle, and Emma kept moving. A few people cooed. Oh. Then another photo. And another. All of them featured Emma, yes, but more importantly, they all included me. There we were at Grandma's house, eating pie. There we were on a school trip to the aquarium. There we were in our Halloween costumes. I was a robot made of cardboard, and Emma was a glitter-covered princess dragging me around by a shoelace like I was her pet. Each one carefully chosen, gently faded, and captioned with the date and location. Some had subtle background music timed with the images, Emma's favorite song, slowed and echoing in the speakers. I saw her face start to shift, just a little. The polite smile cracked, because I hadn't just included the memories. I'd included context. Slide after slide, photo after photo. The crowd saw not only how close Emma and I had once been, but how much of her childhood was tied to mine, and how that closeness just vanished. Then the transitions began to change, from warm colors to cool ones, from sunlight to shadows. The next slide featured a group photo at our grandmother's 70th birthday. Everyone was smiling, except me. I was in the back, half cut out of the frame. The next one was of a family picnic. Everyone had a plate. I didn't. Then Emma's 18th birthday. Cake, candles, confetti, and me in the corner, blurry and out of focus, holding the camera that had taken the photo. Then came the captions. Small, white text at the bottom of each image. Guess who wasn't invited? I took this picture. They cropped me out. The room had gone silent. Not awkward speech silent. Funeral silent. I saw my Uncle Ray frown and lean forward. My mom stood rigid, arms crossed tight. Emma turned around to look at the DJ, then back to the screen, blinking rapidly like the images were stinging her. The photos continued. There was the infamous New Year's Eve party. Everyone with champagne flutes, sparkles in their hair. The caption? I was in the kitchen doing dishes. Then the wedding shower last month. I wasn't in a single photo, but one picture, Emma posing with her bridesmaids, had my reflection in a mirror behind them, carrying a folding table. The caption read, I set this up. They didn't thank me. It was subtle, not dramatic, not cruel, but it cut. I had laid out 15 years of quiet exclusion, invisible labor, and silent rejection, all wrapped in a slideshow they themselves had helped create. I didn't need to yell. They were watching the evidence with their own eyes. A ripple of murmurs began to spread through the tables. People were leaning in to whisper. A few guests, probably friends of the groom, looked confused. I heard someone say, "Wait, is this part of the speech?" And another say, "Who's Daniel again?" I just stood off to the side, hands in my pockets, watching it unfold. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel smug. I felt seen. For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe, just maybe, they were seeing the version of me I'd carried alone for years. The quiet kid who got left out, laughed at, overlooked, but who remembered everything. And then the final slide hit the screen. It was a photo from last year. Christmas Eve. The whole family in matching pajamas. A cozy fire, a mountain of presents. Everyone beaming. Except me. Because I wasn't in it. Because I hadn't been invited. The caption, simple and stark, read. Not even a text. There was a long beat of silence after that. No music. No transition. Just the photo and the quiet echo of a family that finally had to look at what it had become. Emma stood slowly, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just turned and walked out of the reception hall without a word, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. I saw my uncle start to rise, jaw clenched, eyes darting toward me. But before he could say anything, the DJ, clearly catching on, turned off the projector and fumbled to restart the music. It came back in mid-track, some upbeat pop song that felt almost insulting against the mood in the room. My mom didn't look at me. She just stared down at her hands, like they weren't hers anymore. And I walked out the side door into the garden, where the fairy lights still glowed like nothing had happened, and sat on a stone bench beneath a weeping willow. I hadn't planned on doing any of this when I arrived. I'd honestly just wanted to be included, to have a chair, a name tag, a plate. But if they weren't going to give me a place at the table, I'd show them what happens when the person they ignore stops playing along. And now that the music was playing again and the party was supposed to resume, they all knew. The outsider had spoken, and the night wasn't over yet. I stayed outside longer than I expected. The air had that post-rain kind of stillness, even though it hadn't rained. You know what I mean? Heavy, like the atmosphere itself was waiting for something. The murmurs from the reception drifted out through the open garden doors, low and nervous, like a classroom full of students after someone's just been sent to the principal's office. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe for someone, anyone, to come out and ask me why. Maybe for my mom to finally acknowledge that she saw the whole thing, that she'd been part of it, that I wasn't just imagining the years of silence and second-place treatment. But nobody came, at least not right away. Instead, I sat with my hands clasped, watching the light flicker through the tree branches above me. A breeze passed through, shaking some of the petals loose from the nearby flower arrangements. One of them landed on my lap, a white rose petal, soft and unbothered, like it hadn't just witnessed a nuclear family meltdown in slow motion. That's when I heard footsteps, heels, clicking fast against the stone walkway. I turned, and there she was. Emma. No veil, no smile. Her hair, once pinned in a perfect knot, was half undone and brushing against her bare shoulders. She looked less like a bride and more like a woman who'd just realized she didn't know the people sitting at her own table. I stood instinctively, unsure of what to say. I expected her to yell, to demand I take it all back, maybe even slap me, or tell me I'd ruined the happiest day of her life. But instead, she just stared at me for a moment, then said, quietly, "You kept the photos." I nodded slowly. I did. Emma stepped closer. Her voice didn't waver, but it wasn't strong either. "I didn't know you still had those." "I kept everything," I replied, "because it was all I had." She looked down, pressing her fingers against her palm. Maybe out of nerves. Maybe to keep from saying something worse. "I didn't ask them to exclude you," she said finally. "I swear I didn't." "You didn't stop them either," I said, not harshly, just stating a fact. She winced a little. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "No, it never is." There was silence again. Just the wind and the faint sound of utensils clinking against plates inside. Emma looked away, then back at me. "You really felt like an outsider?" I couldn't help but laugh. Not loudly, just a soft, bitter sound in my throat. "You sat at the table," I said. I said it. She flinched. And for a moment, I saw the child I remembered, not the woman in the bridal gown, Not the picture-perfect golden girl of the family, but the kid who used to sneak into my room at night when there was thunder because my bunk bed felt safer. The girl who used to call me her favorite cousin when she thought no one else was listening. The one who, somewhere along the way, just stopped. "I didn't forget you," she said, more to herself than to me. I shrugged. "You didn't need to. Everyone else did it for you." Then, for the first time since I arrived, Emma looked angry. Not at me, at herself. Or maybe at the whole picture. "They said you were always too quiet. That you didn't like being involved." I figured. I don't know. I guess I figured you were okay being in the background. I tilted my head. "You ever think I was quiet because no one ever asked me to speak?" That hung in the air for a while. She sat beside me on the stone bench, her gown billowing slightly around her feet. A butterfly passed overhead, totally unaware that a wedding was crumbling in real time below it. "I watched the whole slideshow," she said eventually. "All of it." And she swallowed. It was true. Every frame of it. We sat in silence again, both of us staring at the garden like it might give us answers. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. "Why'd you do it?" I turned to look at her. "You mean why'd I show it?" Emma nodded. I paused, thinking. "Because I needed them to see," I said. "Not just you, all of them. I needed them to stop pretending like it didn't happen. Like I wasn't there. Like I was some extra in their lives who should just be grateful for the crumbs." Her eyes were red now. Not crying, but close. "I'm sorry," she said. I believed her. In that moment, I really did. But forgiveness is a process, not a sentence. And just as I was about to say that out loud, the garden doors opened again. This time, not heels, but hard, fast footsteps. I turned and saw Uncle Ray storming across the path, fists clenched, face red with fury. "There you are," he snapped. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma stood up instantly. "Uncle Ray, stay out of this," he barked at her, then rounded on me. "You think this is cute? Hijacking the wedding? Making a damn scene." I stood slowly, calm but ready. It wasn't a scene. It was the truth. He took a step closer. "You've embarrassed this entire family. You better get your things, Daniel, and leave, now." Emma stepped between us. "No, he's not going anywhere." "This isn't your call, sweetheart," he growled. "You're not the only one paying for this day." Her voice was sharp. "No, but he helped make it happen." Uncle Ray's jaw tensed. "Don't be naive. He's always been a problem. You think he did this for closure?" "No, he did this to ruin your moment." I exhaled. "You mean the moment where I was supposed to stand in the back and clap while no one remembered my name?" He took another step, and I saw the vein in his temple twitch. "You ungrateful little." But then another voice cut through. "You don't get to talk to him like that." It was my mom. She was standing at the edge of the garden now, arms folded tightly, face pale. Not defensive, not angry, guilty. Uncle Ray turned. "Oh, please, don't start." But she interrupted him. "He's right. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it." He scoffed. "Oh, so now you're defending him?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm owning it." And just like that, the momentum in the garden shifted. But before anyone could say anything more, before Uncle Ray could argue, or Emma could speak again, or I could finally ask the question I'd been carrying for over a decade, a loud crash sounded from the reception hall. Then a scream. Then another. And someone yelled, "Call 911." I turned toward the venue. My heart dropped. And just like that, the wedding went from tense to something else entirely. The three of us stood frozen in the garden, me, Emma, and my mom. All of us spinning toward the reception hall as the screams grew louder. Uncle Ray had already broken into a run, shoving open the doors and vanishing into the chaos inside. For a split second, I didn't move. It felt like the moment when your ears go quiet after an explosion, when your body registers something has happened, but your mind hasn't caught up yet. Then Emma whispered, "What was that?" and took off running, her train dragging behind her like smoke. I followed without thinking. Inside, the reception hall had gone completely haywire. The floral arch had collapsed. Two of the tall centerpiece vases were shattered on the floor, petals and shards scattered across the tile like confetti. A table near the dance floor had been flipped, chairs pushed aside in the frenzy. Someone, I think it was Emma's college roommate, was sobbing into her hands while two guests crouched next to an elderly man on the floor. His face was pale, lips tinged with blue, and someone was performing chest compressions. "Carter's grandfather," Emma gasped, clutching her chest. I stood back, helpless, as paramedics rushed in through the main entrance. Someone must have called them the second he collapsed. The DJ had stopped the music entirely now, and the only sounds were panicked murmurs, the rustle of movement, and the rhythmic thump-thump of CPR. One of the servers guided Emma to the side, out of the way. She looked dazed, like her wedding had been torn in two in less than an hour. First emotionally, now physically. And then, like a switch had flipped in his head, Uncle Ray saw me standing in the corner. "You," he growled, storming across the room. A security guard instinctively stepped between us, hand on his chest. "Sir, not now." But Uncle Ray pushed past. "This is your fault. You cursed the day, you selfish little brat." I blinked. "What?" "This whole thing. The slideshow, the drama, the spectacle. You poisoned the room. You brought this energy in." I was stunned. "You think I caused a heart attack?" "Because I told the truth." "You turned this into a war zone," he spat, so loud that a few guests turned. What kind of pathetic loser ruins someone else's wedding just to feel important for 5 minutes? "Stop it!" My mom's voice rang out from behind me. She moved fast, stepping between us, holding her hand up like a wall. "This is enough, Ray." He ignored her, eyes locked on me. "You think you're the victim? You always have. You're just bitter that no one ever gave you a trophy for breathing." I opened my mouth, not to defend myself, but to tell him something I hadn't even realized I needed to say until now. "You're right," I said. "I used to want the trophy. I used to want you to notice, to see me, to treat me like I mattered. But I don't need it anymore. I don't need your seat at the table, because I built my own, and you were never invited." His face twisted, but before he could speak, the paramedics stood up. One of them looked toward the DJ booth and shouted, "We got a pulse." He's breathing again. The tension in the room dropped like a stone. A few guests exhaled audibly. Emma covered her mouth and started crying. This time, tears of fragile relief. "Transporting now," the lead EMT called out. "Let's make space." Everyone parted as they rolled the stretcher through. Carter, pale and stunned, trailed behind his grandfather silently, holding a folded suit jacket in his hands. When he passed Emma, she reached out and touched his shoulder gently. No words, just understanding. Once the stretcher was gone, people slowly returned to their seats, but the atmosphere had shifted. The buzz of small talk didn't return. No one reached for the champagne anymore. The cake sat untouched. It was clear the celebration had ended, even if the timeline said otherwise. Back in the garden, Emma stood with me again, barefoot now, holding her heels in one hand. Her dress was stained at the hem, and her hair was nearly all the way down. "I think that's it," she said quietly. "The wedding's over." "No," I said softly. "The party's over. But the wedding? That's what you build after this." She gave a weak smile. "Are you sure you're not the one who majored in philosophy?" I chuckled. Just a guy who got used to thinking in silence. We sat again under the willow tree. The breeze had returned, cooler now, like the world was letting out a breath it had been holding for too long. My mom approached, slower than before. Her hands were clasped in front of her, like she was walking into a confessional. "I should have said something years ago," she began. I didn't interrupt. She sat beside me. "I knew. About the birthdays. The exclusion. All of it. I just thought if I ignored it, it wouldn't hurt as much." "It still hurt," I said. "I know," she whispered. I was weak. That caught me off guard. I spent so many years trying to please everyone. Ray, your father, the family. I thought if I kept my head down, things would balance out. But all I did was teach you to do the same, to stay quiet when people stepped on you. I looked at her. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. "I never blamed you for being quiet," she said. "But I do blame myself for never teaching you that your voice mattered." The silence between us wasn't awkward this time. It was healing. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," she added. "But I want to try, if you'll let me." I nodded, slowly, and for the first time in a long, long while, I believed her. Emma gave us space and walked back toward the venue. A few remaining guests were still milling around, saying quiet goodbyes. I watched her hug Carter. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in one afternoon. But when they turned to walk toward the car together, hand in hand, it felt real. Like they weren't pretending anymore. Like everything had finally been stripped down to what actually mattered. Before I left, I walked past the DJ booth one last time. He looked up, hesitant. "Wasn't expecting that kind of wedding drama," he muttered. "Neither was I." He grinned, more out of disbelief than humor. "You're lucky she didn't kill you." I guess, I said. Or maybe she finally saw me. I got in my car just as the sun started to set. The road home was long and quiet, winding through hills and fading light. I rolled the window down, let the wind hit my face, and didn't play any music. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and the occasional chirp of birds as the day ended. When I got home, I pulled out my phone. A new text had come in from Emma. You were never the outsider. We just never deserved your loyalty. Thank you for showing me who you really are. I'm sorry it took this long. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, without replying, I opened my laptop. And I deleted the backup slideshow. Because I didn't need it anymore. They had finally seen me. And that was enough.